It was a normal Friday evening, like any other. I sat on the old sofa, a glass of red wine shimmering in the dim yellow light. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My wife, Laura, had texted me that she would be late because she had a workout with Megan, her best friend. I was used to nights like this, alone, waiting for Laura to return, smiling but exhausted from the weird activities she and Megan always did. But tonight, something was different. The air felt heavier, or maybe it was just me. I was scrolling through my phone to kill time when suddenly the screen lit up. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. With a moment of hesitation, I pressed accept. Hello? I said, trying to keep my voice calm. On the other end of the line was a male voice, deep and slightly nervous. Hi, this is Nathan. You don't know me, but I think you need to hear this. My heart skipped a beat, a strange feeling filling my chest. I sat up straight, my voice cracking. Nathan? Who is it? What did you call me for? Nathan took a deep breath, as if weighing each word. I used to date Megan, your wife, Laura's best friend, but not anymore. He paused, as if to control his voice. I'm not calling to talk about me and her. I'm calling because I thought you should know that Laura has been attending some unusual parties. I held my breath. Unusual? What do you mean? The partner swapping parties, Nathan said bluntly, his voice unflinching. Laura went to them with Megan. Every word he said was like a punch to my face. I felt my mind go blank, unable to breathe. No way! You're lying, I shouted, standing up from the sofa. The wine glass on the table fell down, making a loud crashing sound. I wish I was lying, Nathan continued, his voice serious, but I can't stay silent anymore. I trusted Megan, but she dragged Laura into this, and I thought you should know. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Do you have proof? Or is this just hearsay? Nathan sighed. I don't have pictures or videos, but I know. Megan told me she was proud of dragging Laura to these parties. I don't want to do this, but you need to know the truth. I didn't know what to say. My whole body was frozen. The image of Laura, my wife, the person I loved more than anything, smiling home every night, now seemed like a cruel joke. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice trembling. I don't want anything, Nathan replied, his voice suddenly softer. I just think you have a right to know. I know this will hurt you, but you need to face it. I hung up without another word. The house was silent. The clock was still ticking, but now it was like a hammer hammering on my mind. I collapsed onto the sofa, my mind a jumble of unanswered questions. Laura? Attending parties like that? She was the one I trusted, the one I thought was the rock of our marriage. How could she do this? But deep down, I realized that Nathan's words had touched a fear I had tried to ignore. The changes in Laura, the secrets she kept, the presence of Megan in her life, all of them were now pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to see. I sat there, still clutching the phone, confused. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. But first, I needed to prepare for the worst. And I knew my life would never be the same from this moment on. Nathan's call kept me awake that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while Laura lay beside me, breathing steadily in her sleep. I couldn't take my eyes off her. The image of the wife I once loved and trusted was now filled with questions. Had she betrayed me? Was she really at those parties? Laura's every move, every word she had said over the past few months began to play in my mind like a slow-motion movie. In retrospect, it all started not long ago, when Megan reappeared in Laura's life. Megan, her best friend from college, was the type of person who stood out with her jet black hair and bold style of dress. She always exuded confidence, but I never felt completely comfortable around Laura. There was something about Megan that made me feel uneasy, a freedom that was too much, without boundaries. At first, I didn't pay much attention. The two women were close, going out to eat, going to the gym, trying new things. I always encouraged Laura to stay friends because I thought it was good for her. But gradually, those get-togethers started to get strange. Laura would come home with stories about new activities Megan had invited her to. You wouldn't believe it, she laughs, recalling the first trampoline session Megan took her on. We were jumping around like kids, but sweating like crazy. Megan says it's the hottest workout right now. I laughed along with her at the time, thinking it was harmless, just a way to stay healthy. But now, looking back, I wonder if it was just the beginning of a series of strange behaviors. Not long after, Laura brought home a bundle of sage. She lit it, walking around the house, the smoke billowing into the air. To ward off negative energy, she explained. As I frowned at her, as if she had invented an ancient ritual. I didn't believe in such things, but I didn't object, since she seemed to enjoy it. Then Laura took a strange class Megan recommended, a mix of kickboxing and Zumba. She came home with bruises on her arms and legs, but she smiled happily when I asked if she was okay. It's just exercise, she said, smiling brightly. But now I wonder if the bruises were just from exercise, as she put it. But it all came into focus one evening a few weeks ago. We were having dinner, and Laura mentioned Megan and a fun party. She spoke in a matter-of-fact tone, even with a hint of humor. Megan invited me to a partner-swapping party, she said, her eyes lighting up with a smile. I froze, putting my chopsticks down on the table. What? You're kidding, right? Laura laughed and waved her hand. Of course not. I refuse. That's crazy. She continued eating as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that was simmering inside me. It had sounded like a harmless joke, but the way Laura told it made me wonder, why was she so comfortable talking about something so horrible? After that evening, I began to notice small changes in Laura's behavior. She spent more time with Megan, the meetings lasting late into the night. She came home with a big smile, but sometimes I caught her looking far away, as if she was hiding something. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to trust Laura, but Nathan's words kept ringing in my head. The changes in her, the secrets, the strange stories. It all started to add up to a big doubt. Was Laura really the wife I believed she was? Or had she entered a world I didn't know? The feeling of unease grew, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. I needed to find out the truth, even if it broke my heart. In the days that followed, I began to notice more and more of Laura's behavior. Every night, she came home later than usual. At first, I told myself it was just a long meeting with Megan. But what bothered me most was how she held her phone. Laura had never done that before. She had always been comfortable leaving it on the table or letting me borrow it if I needed it. But now she kept it in her pocket or held it tightly in her hand, even taking it into the bathroom. One night, while Laura was in the shower, I decided to check her phone. It made me feel like a bad person, but I had no other way to assuage my suspicions. I unlocked the phone, but what I found wasn't exactly conclusive evidence. There were no suspicious messages in the main messaging app, but in the archive, I came across a conversation with Megan. Megan, he won't know. I've been doing this all this time, and no one has ever noticed. Laura, I'm still nervous. This is the first time. If he finds out, I'll lose everything. Megan, trust me. Just enjoy it. I'll protect you. Reading this, I felt my heart drop into an abyss. This conversation could mean many things, but in the context of Nathan's call, I couldn't help but think the worst. I put my phone back before Laura came out of the bathroom. When she walked into the living room with wet hair and a familiar smile, I could only look at her without saying anything. In my mind, I tried to piece together the puzzle into a complete picture, but each piece I added only made the picture darker. My suspicions continued to grow. Another night, as Laura slept, I noticed she hadn't set a passcode on her laptop. I opened it and checked my browsing history. And there, amid the search results for recipes and yoga routines, I came across suspicious results. How to spice up your marriage, swinger parties near me, and how to hide your tracks online. I sat there staring at the screen. The keywords were like a blow to my heart. I couldn't understand. Was Laura, the wife I trusted, searching for these things? Was she trying to hide it from me but not deleting her search history? Or did she want me to find out so we could have a frank conversation? I didn't know. And that only made me more confused. The feeling of unease grew so strong that I couldn't sit still. One day, Laura said she was going to meet Megan that evening. I pretended to agree, but after she left, I decided to tag along. I felt like a nosy person, but I had no choice. I drove far enough away from Laura that she wouldn't notice. She stopped in front of a small cafe, but instead of going in, she stood outside, waiting. Megan appeared a short time later. They talked for a while, and then something I didn't expect happened. Laura and Megan got into another car together, one I didn't recognize. I watched them from a distance, trying to stay calm. The car pulled into a quiet suburban neighborhood. They stopped in front of a large house, the lights on inside blazing. Cars were parked close together outside, and loud music was coming from inside the house. I sat in the car, my heart pounding. Where was this? And why was Laura here? I stared at the house, trying to come up with a rationale, but the truth was clear to me. This could be the special party Nathan and Megan had mentioned. I didn't dare go in. I couldn't face what might be going on inside. I just sat there, in the dark, watching and feeling completely helpless. When I got home, I didn't say anything to Laura when she returned. Her eyes bright and her smile as sweet as ever, but inside, a storm of doubt had taken over. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed the truth, and I needed to face her, even if it meant destroying everything we had. The next morning, while Laura was still asleep, I sat alone in the living room, my mind heavy with images from the night before. The house was eerily quiet, as if the air around me was holding its breath, waiting for something to explode. My mind was a maze of unanswered questions. What was Laura hiding? What was she really doing in that house? And why was I, the husband she had promised to be faithful and loving, unaware? I needed answers, but I knew I couldn't confront Laura right now, not when everything was so unclear. So I decided to dig deeper. If Laura really had something to hide, I needed to know. Even if it broke my heart, I needed the truth. I went back to Laura's laptop where I had found the initial clues. This time, I didn't stop at her browsing history. I looked through every folder, every application, even every file she had deleted. After some digging, I found an email account I'd never heard of, an address completely different from the personal and work email addresses she used. The email address gave me goosebumps. l.freedom99@... I opened a new tab and tried to log into that account. I'm not sure why I did it, but I guessed the password using Laura's birthday, which she used for all her other accounts. And to my surprise, it worked. My inbox was empty. Not a single email, not a single message. But when I checked my archives, a series of emails popped up. The subject lines left me speechless. Swinger party RSVP confirmation, location and rules for tonight's gathering, tips for first-time couples. I felt like someone had stabbed me in the heart. Anger rose, but at the same time, pain filled my entire body. Laura had lied. Not only did she know about these parties, she was attending them. I opened each email, reading the instructions on how to prepare, the rules of the party, and the list of couples who would be attending. Laura's name appeared clearly, along with a scrawled line, attending with Megan. Megan, that name now haunted me like a curse. She was the one who dragged Laura into this. She was the one who made things so bad between me and my wife. I kept reading, and in an email from Megan, I found a conversation that took my breath away. Megan, you need to loosen up. These parties aren't just about swapping partners. It's about freedom, about being free from constraints. Trust me, you'll feel great. Laura, I don't know, but I think you're right. Maybe I need this. Megan, definitely. Just remember, don't let Michael know. He wouldn't understand. Reading this, I let go of the keyboard, feeling like I had no strength left to stand up. The words of Laura, who I had always thought of as my honest and loving partner, were now nothing but lies. She had hidden from me. She had crossed a line I never thought she would cross. I wondered, when had Laura changed? Or had she always been like this, and I just hadn't noticed? These questions made my head spin, but one thing was clear. I could no longer pretend that everything was okay. I needed to face Laura, but not now. I needed more time to prepare for the confrontation, a conversation that would change our lives forever. I couldn't sit still any longer. The evidence in the email had pushed me to a point where any excuses from Laura would be meaningless, but part of me still wanted to be sure. I needed something undeniable, so that when I faced her, I wouldn't have to doubt myself. So I decided to follow her again. A week later, on a Friday night, Laura said she was going out to see Megan. This time, I pretended not to care. I smiled, nodded, and even wished her a good time. But as soon as the door closed behind me, I quickly grabbed my car keys and followed. My heart beat faster with each passing minute, both worried that she would find out and eager for answers to all my doubts. Laura drove straight to a place I didn't know. It was a large house in the suburbs, with a row of luxury cars parked outside. The lights in the windows were shining brightly, and I could hear music coming from inside. She parked, got out, and was quickly greeted by Megan at the door. They both laughed and talked happily before disappearing inside. I sat in the car, my heart heavy, staring at the house. This was where all the secrets were kept. This was where the parties Nathan had talked about were held. But I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. This time, I needed to know exactly what was going on inside. I got out of the car and started walking around the house, keeping my distance so as not to be seen. Through a side window, I saw people gathered in the large living room, dimmed lights and glasses of wine in hand. They were laughing and talking, but what shocked me was the way they touched each other, not just in a casual way. A few couples stood closer than usual, their eyes full of meaning. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I searched for Laura among the crowd, and finally, I saw her. She was standing in the corner of the room, talking to a man I didn't recognize. He was tall and elegant, and his hand rested on her shoulder in a natural way. Laura smiled, not at all embarrassed or nervous. She looked comfortable, as if this was something she had been used to for a long time. My heart broke. This was no longer a question. This was real, and it was happening right before my eyes. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, was standing here, in a strange house, doing things she had promised she would never do. I felt a surge of anger, wanting to rush in and pull her away, but I knew I couldn't. This was not the time to act impulsively. I got back into the car, gripping the wheels so hard my knuckles turned white. I sat there, trying to control myself, taking deep breaths to calm myself. This was not the time to confront. I needed to prepare, to think things through before I acted. But one thing was clear. There was no room for doubt. What I had just seen had shattered any last shred of faith I had in Laura. When Laura came home that night, she was as usual, smiling sweetly and asking me what I had been doing while she was gone. I looked at her, feeling both angry and hurt, but I didn't let on. I knew that a confrontation between us was inevitable, but I wanted to make sure that when it came, I would have the whole truth. I answered her calmly, but inside I was preparing for the coming storm. Laura had no idea that I had seen everything, and the next time we faced each other, I would not give her a chance to hide or make excuses. The following days were filled with extreme stress. Laura continued her life as if nothing had happened, but for me, every smile, every innocent question of hers was a stab in the heart. I could no longer face her normally. All I did was pretend to love, pretend to care, pretend to trust, all to prepare for the moment when I would bring the truth to light. I knew I needed more evidence, something Laura couldn't deny. One night, while she was sleeping, I opened my phone and revisited the secret email I discovered earlier. I knew that whatever I found from there would be the final piece to the puzzle. In my inbox, I found a new email from Megan to Laura. Megan, I just sent over this week's guest list. Be sure to check it out. Don't forget there will be a few new faces this time. They're really fun, and you'll love them. There was an attachment, a list of the party attendees. Laura's name appeared again, alongside Megan's and everyone else's. This made me not only angry, but scared. Laura had not only participated, she had actively become part of this system. She was not Megan's victim, as I had tried to convince myself. I began to piece together the events I had tried to ignore. The times Laura came home late, the bruises on her arms and legs, the mysterious smiles when she talked about her new activities with Megan. All of them now had an explanation, and it wasn't the explanation I wanted to hear. I also realized that she had made more elaborate preparations to hide it from me. The few times I tried to ask her about her meetings with Megan, she answered with seemingly innocent stories. We just went to dinner, or we took a new yoga class. It was really relaxing. But now I knew that all those things were lies. And the most painful thing was that she looked me straight in the eye when she said those things. The look I once believed to be absolute honesty. Part of me wanted to confront her right away. I wanted to force her to confess everything, but the other part held me back. I knew that if I confronted her without enough evidence, she would deny it. Laura was smart, and she could easily turn the tables on me if I wasn't careful. So I decided to wait a little longer. Not long, but long enough to prepare for any eventuality. The next night, when Laura went out for a group meeting with Megan, I followed her again. This time, I brought a small recorder, determined to record what happened as evidence. I followed her to the same house, but this time I didn't stand outside. I wanted to know exactly what was going on inside. I waited for her and Megan to go inside, then peeked through a side door. What I saw froze me. The living room was full, the lights dimmed, soft music playing, and people were chatting intimately. But it didn't stop there. A few couples began to leave together, entering other rooms. Some stood closer together, their eyes communicating non-verbally. And then I saw Laura. She was standing talking to another man, her smile bright, her eyes shining with a confidence I hadn't seen in a long time. But this wasn't my Laura. This was someone else entirely. Someone who had been hiding from me all this time. I held the recorder tightly, anger and hurt swirling inside me. I wanted to rush in and pull her away, scream at her that I knew everything. But I held back. I knew this was not the time to let it out. I needed to stay calm and get this straight. When Laura left the house a few hours later, I was already in the car. I didn't let her know that I'd seen everything, but when she walked into the house with her usual cheerful face and sweet smile, I knew her time was up. The next time we spoke, the truth would come out, and I would not let her deceive me again. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the clock on the wall. The hands ticked away, but it felt like time had stopped. Laura had just walked into the house after her evening with Megan. She was in the bathroom, washing her face and getting ready for bed, while I tried to contain the storm brewing inside me. I knew that this moment could not be delayed any longer. I had enough evidence, enough truth, and enough anger to confront her. I heard the water in the bathroom turn off, then her footsteps on the floor. Laura appeared in the living room doorway, holding a cup of tea that she usually drank before going to bed. She looked at me, smiling as if nothing had happened. "You're not sleeping?" she asked, her voice as gentle as ever. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stared at her, trying to keep my composure. "Sit down, Laura. We need to talk." She looked a little surprised, but sat down in the chair across from me. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes curious but also a little worried. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. "I want to talk about those evenings you spent with Megan, and what really happened." Instantly, I saw her eyes change. A flash of worry crossed her face, but she quickly covered it with a small smile. "What are you doubting? I told you, I'm just going out with her." I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving hers. "Stop lying, Laura. I know everything. The parties, the emails. I saw it all." My words made her freeze. The smile disappeared, and I could see her hands gripping the teacup so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, trying to keep her composure, but her voice was starting to shake. I didn't give in. "Stop pretending. I saw your emails with Megan. I know you were at those parties, and I know you tried to hide it from me." She put her teacup down on the table, her eyes starting to waver. You snooped through my emails? That's my personal life," she said, her voice rising, clearly trying to change the conversation. I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh. "Personal life? Laura, you're talking about a personal life with a husband you've been cheating on for so long? Do you really think I'm going to sit by and not find out while you spend nights with Megan and come back with the lies?" She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, silencing her. "I was watching you, Laura. I saw you and Megan walk into that house. I saw what happened inside. Stop trying to deny it." Her face paled, and I could tell her defenses were crumbling. I didn't do anything," she stammered, but her voice was uncertain. "I only went there for Megan. She made me. I didn't want to." I cut her off, my voice icy. "Don't blame Megan. She didn't force you to send the email. She didn't force you to lie. And she certainly didn't force you to walk into that house. You chose to." She was silent, her head bowed as if she didn't dare meet my eyes. In that moment, I felt like my heart was being torn apart. The woman I once loved, the woman I once thought was my whole world, was now nothing but lies. But I knew that I couldn't be soft-hearted. Not this time. "Do you have anything to say, Laura?" I asked, my tone sharp. She raised her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to stop. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just feel lost. I don't know what to do. Her words stabbed me like knives. Alone? This was her way of dealing with being alone. By betraying me, I felt both angry and hurt, but I tried to keep my tone calm. You're lost, and your solution is to go to mate swapping parties? I asked, my voice sharp. Do you really think I'll understand that? She didn't answer. Tears continued to fall, but I no longer felt pity. The truth was clear. Laura had crossed the line without any justification. Laura sat there, tears streaming down her face, but none of her excuses made me feel any better. All she said only made me feel more pain. Part of me wanted to hold her, wipe away her tears, tell her everything would be okay. But the other part, the betrayed and hurt part, wouldn't let me. Laura, I said, my voice low. I trusted you. I always thought that no matter what happened, you would tell me. But you chose to hide it from me, to participate in something you knew I would never accept. Why? Did you think about me? About our marriage? She looked up, her eyes red, her voice choked. Michael, I don't know how to tell you. I don't want to hurt you, but I don't feel like myself. Megan said this would help me find my freedom, to find the feeling I've lost. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I laughed bitterly. Freedom? Is this your definition of freedom? To cheat on your husband, to walk into those houses, to attend those parties, and to hide everything? Is that your freedom, Laura? She shook her head vigorously, tears falling from her eyes. No, it's not like that. I didn't want to betray you. I swear I never crossed that line. I was just curious. I felt pressured. Megan kept saying that everyone did it, that it wasn't a big deal. I thought if I went with her, I would understand why people did it. But I never did anything wrong. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her with a blank expression. Laura, do you think that just because you haven't done anything specific, I'll accept it? Just because you haven't crossed the final line, that makes things okay? Do you think lying to me, hiding things from me, and stepping foot in that house isn't still a betrayal? She was silent, not knowing what to say. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it meant nothing. The trust between us was broken, and nothing could repair it. I stood up and walked over to her, but not to comfort her. My voice started to get louder, losing its initial calm. You said you felt pressured? What about me? Where am I in your life, Laura? We were married. We built everything together. But when you felt lost, when you felt something was wrong, instead of telling me, you ran to Megan. You chose to lie to me, hide it from me, and now you want me to believe that you are not at fault? Laura cried louder, trying to reach out to touch me. Michael, please, listen to me. I know I was wrong. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid that if I tell you, you won't understand, that you'll think I'm a bad wife. I just want to find myself again. I jerked my hand away from her, stepping back, laughing coldly. Have you found yourself, Laura? Is that what you were looking for when you went to those parties? She was silent, her shoulders shaking, unable to answer. I felt anger rising, but with it came an indescribable pain. The woman I'd given my heart to, the woman I thought was my life partner, was now left with meaningless apologies. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Laura, I love you, but you've destroyed everything. Love can't exist without trust. And that trust, you've killed it. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I know one thing. We can't go on like this. She looked at me, her eyes filled with despair. Michael, please don't say that. I'll do anything to make it right. Please don't leave me. I know I was wrong, but I don't want to lose you. I shook my head, feeling like my heart was being ripped out. Laura, you did everything to lose me. I wasn't the one who left you. You pushed me away. Laura sat there, her shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I felt no emotion. My heart had turned to stone from the moment she confessed. I looked at her, feeling angry, hurt, and empty. The only question in my mind was, what is there to save? I stood up, feeling as if the weight of the room was on my shoulders. Laura, I said, my voice hoarse with pent-up pain. I can't do this anymore. You broke my trust, our trust, and that can't be fixed. She jumped up, walked over to me, her hands shaking as she held onto mine as if trying to hold on to one last shred of hope. Michael, please, don't do this. We can get through this, I swear. I'll never let this happen again. I love you. I really do. I looked into her eyes that once meant the world to me, but now were filled with nothing but emptiness. Laura, love isn't enough to keep a relationship together. It isn't enough to erase betrayal. I loved you more than anything, but that doesn't change the fact that you chose a path I couldn't walk with. I turned and walked towards the bedroom. She ran after me, trying to pull my hand. Michael, please, we can try again. You can't just throw it all away like this. We've had so many memories. You can't let it end like this. I stopped, turning back to look at her. Laura, I'm not the one who ended this. You ended it the moment you decided to walk into that house, when you chose to lie to me instead of telling the truth. The only thing I can do now is accept the truth you created. I walked into the bedroom and pulled the suitcase out of the closet. Laura stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, trying to beg me to stop. Michael, don't. Please, give me a chance. I know I was wrong. I will change. I will do anything to make it right. I didn't answer, just continued packing her things into the suitcase. Every item I put in was a stab in the heart, but I knew it was the right thing to do. This marriage was dead, and nothing could save it. As I dragged the suitcase out the door, Laura fell to her knees, hugging my legs, sobbing. Don't send me away, Michael. Please, I need you. I can't live without you. I bent down, removed her hand, my voice cold but trembling. Laura, you have lived without me for a long time. You chose your path, and now I am choosing mine. We cannot continue like this. She sat down on the floor, her face filled with despair. I dragged the suitcase to the door, opened it, and set the suitcase outside. Find Megan, or whoever you think can help you, but don't come back here again. This is no longer your home. As the door closed behind Laura, I stood there, feeling like everything in my life had just collapsed. Her cries still echoed from outside, but I didn't open the door. I knew if I did, I would break down, and the painful cycle would begin again. I sat down on the chair, my eyes staring into the distance. My mind was filled with memories, mornings spent together, smiles, promises. All that was left now was the ashes of a relationship I thought would last forever. I picked up the phone and dialed my best friend's number. After a few rings, he picked up. Mike, what's up? My voice cracked, but I tried to keep it calm. Come here, I need you. I don't know what to do next. When I hung up the phone, I sat there feeling both empty and relieved. I knew I'd done the right thing, but the right thing isn't always easy. And tonight, for the first time in years, I knew that tomorrow would be a new beginning, even if it was a hard and lonely one. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. There was no sound of Laura's footsteps, no smell of the coffee she always made every morning. There was only absolute silence. To others, this silence might have been a burden, but to me, it was a relief. I felt a sense of relief through the pain that still burned in my heart. I sat in the living room chair, the sunlight streaming through the windows, stretching across the floor. Everything was still there, but nothing was the same. Laura was gone from my life, taking with her the beautiful and painful memories we'd shared. But that also left a void I could fill with something new, something better. That morning, I decided to do what I'd been avoiding for so long, face my true feelings. I took an old photo of Laura and I from my drawer, a photo of our wedding day. I looked at her radiant face, her smile full of happiness. That day, I thought that we would be together forever, that nothing could break the promise we made to each other. But life doesn't always work out the way we expect. I realized that, even though Laura had betrayed me, I was partly responsible for the breakdown of our marriage. Perhaps I hadn't paid enough attention to her feelings, hadn't realized how lost she felt. But at the same time, I knew that nothing justified betrayal. We had reached a point of no return. I put the photo down, but I didn't put it away. I didn't want to erase the past because it was a part of me, of my life, but I also didn't want to be tied to it anymore. In the weeks that followed, I began to focus on myself. I returned to the gym, which I had long neglected. Every drop of sweat that fell to the floor felt like I was shedding pieces of my pain. I also started walking every morning to get some fresh air and clear my mind. I spent time with friends, people I've drifted away from while I was so busy with my marriage. They don't ask too many questions, don't try to analyze or judge. They're just there to listen when I need them, and that really helps me feel less alone. One night, my best friend Jack took me out for a beer. "Mike," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder, "you've lost a big part of your life, but it's not the end. This is your chance to rebuild, to find yourself again." I looked at him, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. Jack was right. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning again. One day, Laura sent me an email. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to get back together. Instead, she apologized, a sincere apology without any excuses. She admitted that she was wrong, that she had ruined our relationship, and that she didn't expect me to forgive her. But she hoped that I could find happiness even without her. I read that email, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry or hurt. I just felt sad. Sad for what was lost, but also relieved that we could both finally move on. I didn't reply to the email, but I knew that I had forgiven her, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved peace. One Sunday morning, I drove to a park near my house. It used to be a place Laura and I used to frequent, but today I came here alone. I sat on a bench, watching children running on the grass, couples walking hand in hand. I no longer felt jealous or regretful. Instead, I felt at peace, a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. I opened my phone, went to notes, and wrote, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." I smiled. It wasn't the happy ending I'd imagined, but it was a new beginning, one I knew I deserved. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew I was ready to embrace it with a lighter heart and a stronger spirit.